Okay, ready for a wild thought experiment. Imagine Earth, but all the men are gone. Now, instead of peace and quiet, we get inundated with alien suitors.
Yeah.
Aliens are lining up, hoping to charm human women and maybe repopulate the planet.
The funny thing is, according to the Encyclopedia Xenologica, it's not a hostile takeover. These alien Romeos are surprisingly respectful, like showing up with cosmic flowers and a lot of awkward charm.
So it's like the universe playing matchmaker, but with species that have wildly different ideas of what's attractive. And forget Tinder, we're talking about a range from muscle-bound titans to invisible sweet talkers. There are even a few that, well, might make you sneeze just by looking at them.
The Encyclopedia Xenologica has a whole section on these courtship rituals. For example, the gravitas musculatus. They think flexing is the ultimate flirting technique. Then there's the aromatus seductorus. They try to woo with scientifically engineered pheromones, but to a lot of people, it smells like old casserole.
A date, and suddenly, bam, you're hit with the smell of week-old tuna casserole.
Yeah.
Talk about a mood killer. I'm cringing just thinking about it. But hey, maybe some people are into that. Who knows?
It does make you wonder, can attraction really be scientifically engineered?
Anyway, speaking of questionable dating strategies, there's the Tentaculum hugtarius. Basically, 8 tentacled cuddle monsters with a serious snacking habit.
Try politely declining a hug from 8 tentacles. Talk about awkward entanglement and their snack of choice. Live bioluminescent slugs. Not exactly romantic picnic material.
Maybe it's their way of showing they can provide. Like, hey, I brought glowing slugs, let's share.
Maybe. Not sure how appealing that would be to most human women, though.
Okay, so we've got muzzle-bound flexors, fragrant mist creatures, and overly affectionate tentacle enthusiasts. But wait, it gets weirder. We've got robots programmed for romance, the Mecanius romanceboticus. Apparently, they're prone to glitches and existential meltdowns.
So picture this. You're on a date, gazing into this robot's eyes, right? And instead of a compliment, it blurts out, "My programming dictates that I must find a mate." But what is the meaning of love in this cold, unfeeling universe?
Oh my God, that's hilariously tragic. Talk about killing the mood. Imagine having to console your robot date during an existential crisis. I'd probably just offer it some oil and call it a night. Speaking of awkward encounters, we can't forget the Philenius charismaticus. Imagine a date with a giant talking cat.
They are very charismatic. Their fur patterns even change depending on their mood, which I guess could be helpful.
Yeah, until they hack up a hairball on your new dress. And the Encyclopedia Xenologica mentions they have a tendency to knock things over. So much for that romantic candlelit dinner.
Domestic tranquility might be a challenge with the Philenius charismaticus.
But, okay, can we talk about the Glimmeratus luminaria for a second? They're literally sparkling with romance. Their bodies are bioluminescent, like living fireworks.
They're the masters of grand romantic gestures, lighting up the night sky with those bioluminescent fireworks. Imagine a marriage proposal written in glowing constellations. Hard to say no to that.
Unless you're trying to sleep. Imagine explaining to your bioluminescent partner that sometimes you just want darkness. Talk about a bright idea gone wrong. And then, of course, we have the Blobus wobbly. I mean, the name says it all, really.
They are described as endearing despite their, shall we say, unconventional anatomy. The constant jiggling in amorphous forms might take some getting used to.
I don't know how comfortable I'd be with the whole jiggling blob thing, but to each their own. Now, for the music lovers out there, we've got the Serenius vocalis. Imagine a serenade by a being that looks like a mermaid but sings like an angel.
Their voices are supposed to soothe even the most troubled soul, but they seem to have trouble with modern earth music. Their attempts at rap are less than successful.
Oh man, a rapping mermaid. That's a mental image I did not need. Sign me up for that reality show. But speaking of things I can't wrap my head around, there's the Invisi Amori, invisible suitors. Talk about a blind date.
They really go all out with romantic gestures, leaving flowers and gifts that just appear out of thin air. The problem is remembering that they're invisible.
Imagine the awkwardness. You're on a date trying to make conversation and your invisible partner walks into a wall because they forgot they weren't corporeal at that moment.
It would definitely make for some interesting social dynamics.
Okay, next up, the Giganthropus giglius. These are the laughing giants with a soft spot for dad jokes. I love a good laugh, but imagine a creature the size of a skyscraper telling you a pun about black holes.
They believe humor is the key to winning hearts, which I have to admit is kind of endearing.
I guess it's hard to resist someone who can literally make the ground shake with laughter. But let's move on to the Reptilia regalicus, the dragon-like beings who are basically space royalty.
They come bearing promises of wealth, status, and, fiery protection. And they're persuasive, often using PowerPoint presentations to outline their benefits as a partner.
PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah.
Really? That's their idea of romance. I guess even dragons have to adapt to the digital age.
It does seem a bit impersonal, doesn't it?
All right, now for something completely different. The Avianus romanticus. Bird-like beings with a flair for the dramatic who see elaborate nests as the ultimate love shack.
Their courtship dances are supposed to be amazing, all intricate aerial maneuvers and synchronized singing.
But imagine the arguments over interior design. Honey, do we really need another giant twig in the living room?
Domestic bliss can get complicated, even across species lines.
And then we have the Vegetablus fertilius, plant-based suitors bringing fruit baskets and landscaping skills to the dating game.
They're perfect for anyone who appreciates a more natural, earthy approach to romance.
Just make sure you're not allergic to pollen.
Indeed, allergies could be a deal breaker in those relationships.
Okay, time for the smooth operators, the Metallus smoothicus. Polished metal beings who are all about sophistication.
Think James Bond, but made of chrome.
I'm not sure I could handle a date who monologues about metallurgy, but maybe that's just me.
To each their own.
And finally, we have the most enigmatic of them all, the Amoebius ambiguosus. Shapeshifters who can literally become your ideal partner.
It does raise some questions about identity. If they can be anyone you want, who are they really? What happens when you realize you're in love with a constantly changing persona?
That's a deep thought for later. Right now, I'm still processing the fact that we just met 15 alien species, each with their own way of trying to win over human women.
And we've only just scratched the surface. Imagine the social implications, the cultural clashes, the sheer chaos of it all.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Stay tuned as we delve into the weird, wild, and wonderfully awkward world of alien dating on a post-male Earth.
Okay, so we've met our lineup of intergalactic bachelors, but now let's get down to the mechanics of it all.
Yeah, the Encyclopedia Xenologica gets pretty wild when it comes to describing how these alien species reproduce. Energy fusion, nanoparticle clouds, harmonic baby making. It's a lot to take in.
It is. Let's start with the gravitas musculatus, those muscle-bound hunks. They call their approach energy fusion, basically a transfer of cosmic energy through touch.
So it's not all about flexing biceps. There's actual science behind it.
Right. And the offspring, according to the Encyclopedia Xenologica, would inherit this strength. Imagine babies who can bench press their cribs.
Wow. Diaper changes would be a whole new challenge. But, okay, let's move on to the Aromatus seductress, the mist-like beings with the interesting approach to romance.
Ah, yes, the masters of pheromone seduction. They release a cloud of nanoparticles. When inhaled, they initiate a kind of chemical bonding at the DNA level.
Wait, so you can get pregnant by breathing. That's both fascinating and kind of terrifying.
It does challenge our understanding of reproduction. And the offspring. They start as these cute little misty orbs. Gradually, they grow into full-fledged beings.
Okay, that is strangely adorable. Floating baby clouds. I can't even picture it. But let's talk about those 8-tentacled cuddle monsters, the Tentaculum hugterius. 8 tentacles, a love of cuddling, and they reproduce using bioluminescent sap.
Exactly. It's secreted from those flower-like openings on their tentacles. The sap merges with the partner's DNA, and then the offspring gestate in special pouches on the hugterius's abdomen.
Trying to imagine what a Tentaculum hugterius nursery would look like. It's a lot to process.
Speaking of a lot to process, those robot Romeos, the Mechanius romancepoticus, they have biosynthetic seed pods.
They do. Housed in these retractable compartments, the pods can merge with compatible organic material, and then the offspring develop in external incubation chambers.
So robot babies and high-tech cribs. This is getting more sci-fi by the minute. What about something a bit more, well, familiar? The Felinius charismaticus, the cat people. How do they,
Their method is surprisingly straightforward, much like their feline counterparts here on Earth. Oh, so no weird space magic or glowing goo involved? Kind of disappointing. What about the Glemiratus luminaria? They've got to have some dazzling way of reproducing.
Right. Their reproductive organs are actually glowing crystals embedded in their chests. When two Glemerati decide to mate, the crystals synchronize, releasing a burst of energy. It forms a luminous orb, which eventually grows into a new Glemiratus.
So they're literally having babies through light shows. That's pretty spectacular.
It makes you wonder about other potential uses for bioluminescence.
Okay, from sparkling babies to something a bit less glamorous. The Blobus wobbli. How do their amorphous, constantly shifting forms even handle reproduction.
They're amazingly adaptable. They mold their reproductive structures to be compatible with their partner. It really shows the sheer diversity of life in the universe.
Diversity is an understatement. Now, the Serenes vocalis, those mermaid-like singers, the Encyclopedia Xenologica says they reproduce through sound.
Harmonic frequencies, to be precise. They release these frequencies from special gills encoding their DNA. When a partner joins in harmony, a tiny aquatic embryo is formed.
So they're singing their babies into existence. That's both beautiful and strange. But what about the Invisiamore? How do invisible beings even?
It's entirely energy-based for them. They emit bioelectric pulses that interact with their partner's physiology, leading to cellular fusion.
So very subtle, very ethereal. And what about their kids? Do they just suddenly appear?
They start as these glowing wisps of energy, then gradually take a more solid form.
Okay, from invisible beings to giant ones. The Gigantopus giglius. Please tell me their method is a little less out there.
Well, they have these bioluminescent markings on their palms. They become active during a ritual called the handshake of life. It's a symbolic exchange of genetic material.
I'm getting flashbacks to awkward middle school dances. At least there's no mistletoe involved.
Right. And their offspring are, as you might imagine, quite large from birth.
Okay, let's move on to the Reptilia regalicus, those dragon-like beings obsessed with power. Do they, lay golden eggs or something?
Close. Scales on their lower torso detach, embedding genetic material. Then the partner incubates those scales. They eventually develop into offspring.
So, like a reptilian version of those biosynthetic seed pods. Speaking of unique methods, the Avianus romanticus, the bird-like beings, they release pollen-like spores during their courtship dances.
And when their partner inhales these spores, it triggers egg formation.
So they're basically pollinating their partners. That's a new take on the birds and the bees.
It is. And speaking of pollination, the Vegetabilus fertilius take a very literal approach to that.
Right, they release glowing spores that combine with their partner's DNA. Very natural, very organic.
Exactly. And their offspring sprout into sapling-like beings, gradually growing into their mature forms.
Okay, from sentient trees to sentient metal. The Metallus smoothicus, what about them? Their method involves alloy seeds.
Yes, which combine with organic matter to create hybrid offspring, part organic, part metallic.
Basically, cyborgs.
Wild.
Wild. And lastly, the shapeshifters, the Amoebius ambiguus. How do they even begin to?
Their reproductive system adapts to match their partners. They create a protoplasmic cocoon for their offspring to develop.
A cocoon of goo. Charming. But hey, at least their kids can shapeshift, right? That's got to count for something.
It certainly makes for interesting family dynamics.
We've covered everything from glowing orbs to pollen-based romance to...
Wow.
Well, you get the picture. The universe is clearly very creative when it comes to procreation.
It really is. It makes you think about the possibilities for genetic diversity, the potential for hybrid vigor even, and of course the ethical considerations of interspecies procreation.
That's a whole other conversation. Right now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the sheer weirdness of it all.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about all these alien bachelors and their interesting ways of making babies. But now I'm curious about the bigger picture. What does a world where humans and aliens are dating, mating, creating hybrid offspring, what does that actually look like?
It's a question that's got everyone buzzing, from sociologists to anthropologists to fashion designers.
Right. Imagine bringing a Globus wobbly-eye home to meet your parents. What do you even serve for dinner? And how do you explain that constant jiggling to grandma?
The Encyclopedia Xenologica doesn't have an etiquette guide for interspecies dating, but I think it's safe to say some major adjustments are going to be needed.
Oh, the culture clash. What happens when a Glimmeratus luminaria wants to go stargazing, but their human partner just wants to sleep? Talk about a difference in nocturnal habits.
And don't forget the communication barriers. Will we need a universal translator app just to order pizza with a Serenes vocalis?
Imagine trying to have a deep conversation with someone who speaks in harmonic frequencies. It'd be like trying to understand a whale song.
And the fashion? Oh, the possibilities.
I can already see it. Bioluminescent clothing lines. Dresses designed for 8 tentacles. Maybe even invisible fashion for the Invisiamorii.
Can you imagine the awkward moments when an Invisiamore forgets they're invisible? They walk into a wall or show up to a party naked thinking they're still blending in.
Oh my God, the social faux pas would be legendary. We need a reality show about this, like right now.
Alien Bachelor has a nice ring to it. Or maybe Interspecies Matchmaker.
I would totally watch that. The drama, the intrigue, the tears, the laughter. It'd be amazing.
But beyond the entertainment value, there are serious implications.
Uh,
What happens when human and alien cultures really start to merge? What new traditions will emerge? What new conflicts?
right. Will we have intergalactic holidays?
Right.
Alien-human fusion cuisine? Will kids be learning to speak Tentaculum hugtarius in school alongside Spanish and French?
The possibilities are mind-boggling.
And let's not forget about the kids, those adorable little hybrid babies. What happens when a Glimmeratus luminaria and a human have a kid? Will it sparkle?
According to the Encyclopedia Xenologica, hybrid offspring will probably inherit traits from both parents.
Yeah.
But the exact combinations, impossible to predict.
Imagine a baby that can purr like a Pholinus charismaticus and shapeshift like an Amoebius ambiguous, or a kid who can speak in harmonic frequencies and also belt out a power ballad.
The potential for genetic diversity is incredible. We could see a whole new generation with abilities we can only imagine.
It's like evolution on fast forward.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe these hybrid kids will be the ones to solve some of humanity's problems.
Maybe they'll inherit the resilience of the gravitas musculatus, the adaptability of the globus wobbly, the wisdom of the vegetabilis fertilius.
That's a beautiful thought. A future where humans and aliens live together, not just as partners, but as collaborators, innovators, friends.
It's a future full of hope, potential, and, let's be honest, a good amount of hilarious chaos.
So what do you think? What kind of future do you see for this world where humans and aliens are, well, getting busy?
Is it a path to greater understanding, a blending of cultures, a celebration of diversity, or is it a recipe for disaster, a cosmic comedy of errors? We want to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies. And remember, love is out there, and it might just be wearing a tentacle or two.